What is up, guys? It's the Sound Alchemist, and once again I am here with
Gersh1.
and welcome back to another installment of For the Greater.
This is a video series where we answer the questions left by you, the viewer. If you have a question for us, comment down below. Put question in front of your question because we get to those questions first. And that is what Bruce Corey did. He asks.
Bruce Corey?
Bruce Corey.
Is that like two people or one person?
It's probably two people, but they have the same account. He asks, or they ask, are there physical forms for the Chaos Gods? Not like a voice speaking to you, like the thing over there is Nurgle, and I can hurt him. Hear him, I guess you meant to say. No, there's no physical representation. Well, yes.
Yes and no. For the most part, the gods of chaos are just an amalgamation of beliefs and really that's it of sentient beings that have convoluted in the warp and created these gods.
I guess the best way to understand it is there a physical representation of fear?
Wind.
I was going to say fear.
Okay, fear. Yeah, that works.
And when you think of fear, the thing that pops into your mind is like somebody's face, like being scared or something like that. But is that really fear? No. Like, it's an emotion. It doesn't have a
physical
representation.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it does, because we just agreed that it's somebody being scared, or the look of being scared. That translates the message of fear, and that's the same thing with the Chaos Gods. So the Chaos Gods, for example, the easiest one would be Khorne. Khorne's physical representation is just a giant demon on a throne of skulls. Tzeentch is that one like blue thing with two mouths, one in the stomach and one in the head.
Yeah.
So those are the physical representations that people throughout the history of the Imperium have witnessed. But is that really them? No.
Yeah. And it also differs from person to person. Just like, your representation of fear might be slightly different. Maybe fear for you is that scary face of like an old man, and fear for me is like a scary face of like a child or something like that.
Yeah. You don't know, and it changes.
Right.
It probably changes with races too, because that's another thing that I was creating a 40 facts on the factions, or the origins of the factions of 40K, and I realized that because the narrative is focused on humanity, there is so many things that are human-centric. So like gene stealers, obviously the hybrids are human gene stealer hybrids. The chaos possessed demons, it's always like
Human possessed chaos.
Yeah, but you don't ever see other races, and there are other races, because there's demon-possessed orcs. There's same thing with gene stealers.
Gene stealer Tau, gene stealer Kroot.
Yeah, so the representation of, let's say, a Vespid for the Chaos God Tzeentch might be different, because they completely interpret reality in a different sense.
Right.
So, yeah.
Very, very metaphysical.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, demons, I guess you could say, are the physical representations of those gods, because that is portion of the god coming to real space in a physical form.
Yeah.
So like bloodletters, bloodthirsters, nurglings, all that.
Juggernauts, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Good question.
Yeah.
Makes you think about life,
It does.
death, and the destruction of our ancestors.
I'm going to shed a cholo tear in a little bit.
Next question comes from Devin Ho. If a second Age of Strife happened, what would be the effects for all of the factions? It kind of already has. So I think the Mork's Grin, basically, what is it called? The
Cicatrix Maledictum.
Yeah, that just completely broke apart the Imperium, and Gilliman has been able to slowly pull everybody together. And that's the story of the Ultima Crusade? No. Is that what it's called? Like the whole, like...
Yeah, I want to say... Yes.
Reunification of the Imperium. And we saw what happened with them. So, like, the Imperium was able to, like, withstand it because the Imperium's already kind of broken. The orcs just... Some of them went away. Some empires went away, but obviously some of them saw it as a good thing. Like, there's more fighting. The Tau, the birth of...
the Star-Tide Nexus and all that stuff.
The Tau, yep. And then I was thinking the Eldar, the birth of Iniad.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. The birth of Iliad, it's so confusing because like it's like Eldrad started to do something, and then the Infinity Circuit, and it's weird. But hey, it happened.
It happened.
So yeah, the Cicatrix Maledictum could be like, because it started so many things that you could say it is kind of like the second, Age of Strife.
Age of Strife. You got one?
Yeah, this one's by Indefinite Chris. Are there any Xeno species that could be considered big enough and enough of a threat to be introduced as their own faction upon the tabletop? I mean, there are other Xeno species that are like spacefaring and technologically advanced, but we don't know a whole lot about it, and I feel like GW introducing a Xeno race like that wouldn't bring in the money, the numbers, and overall the effort to create all that.
Yeah, the closest thing I can think of is the what are the multi-limbed aliens that kind of look like gene stealers? Rakghoul.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the closest thing I can think of. But they would play more like Dark Eldar than they would.
Because essentially they're like pirates.
Yeah. So that's one. I think when you start talking about like big armies, there's more room to play in 30K. So in 30K, the Forge World guys can actually build a Inorex army. They can build a what's the other one? Diapex or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
So like the ones where like the aliens were in control of humanity and they were either mutating humans.
Diasporax.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
They're mutating humans, or a technology like the Men of Iron could be a whole like army all on its own.
Yeah, you actually saw whole legions of Space Marines fighting against certain types of Xeno species.
Yeah.
I believe the LFs were one of them, which were like angelic things that could control humans and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It took Horus and Sanguinius to take them down. So, I mean, that could be its own army. But again, this is all like back in 30K.
Yeah.
I think it would be more interesting to see certain individual creatures come out, and that's kind of what they're doing with Necromunda and the Blackstone Fortress. They brought out Zotes, the Men of Iron. Yeah. So just to see other Xenos coming out of the woodworks like that would be pretty cool, instead of focusing a whole army on it.
And you could actually use those in the tabletop.
They've got their own rules and stuff.
They'll be standalone models, but
yeah,
you can use them.
Which one would you say you want to see come with a model with rules?
From just like in general?
Any Xeno species.
Squats.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
What about you?
What are they called? It's those little like trash men that can control time around them.
Oh, I forget what they're called. But yeah, they kind of look like raccoons.
Yeah.
Raccoons in space. But like really ugly raccoons. Well, no, mole rats, I would say.
Yeah, they're dirty and wormy and stuff like that. So.
Or what are those things that collect trash in Star Wars? The little, I forget what they're called.
The Jedi Order. Ooh, shots fired.
Next question.
This one's by Will Higgins. If the Emperor had warned the Primarchs about chaos, would it have stopped any traitor Primarchs from becoming corrupted? I don't think so. I think it still would have played out similarly. Because just because you know about chaos doesn't mean you're not going to go to them. Some of them might even go to them willingly sooner than before. So, yeah.
But some major things would happen if chaos, or if Horus did not fall to chaos. Right. One of them is that the Emperor would still be walking around, because it was only Horus who was able to like defeat the Emperor in that way because of the feelings that the Emperor had towards Horus. That's his favorite son.
Yeah. You think if Horus wasn't injured, he wouldn't have turned to chaos?
Like yeah, for sure. It was the injury that he received from the Lair Blade, and then it was the
Anathame. There
you go.
Yeah.
And then it was the whole like healing that happened that really corrupted him. So even if his Luna Wolves were smart enough to be like, yeah, don't do that. You know who's to blame? Erebus. Erebus is a piece of shit.
Core Pharaon too, but I don't think as much as Erebus.
No. Next question comes from Wikipedia Intellectual. Which cosmic devourer would come out on top, Galactus or the combined force of the Catan in their prime? Galactus.
Really?
Galactus like existed before
Well,
the
yeah,
galaxy.
he's like
did.
one of the Celestials, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. And the Catan are just parasites.
Right, but they were able to eat entire star systems. Galactus just eats worlds.
But I mean, he can. I mean, he's a
Well, I mean, he can, yeah,
yeah.
but there's only one of him, and there's like how many Catan?
Oh well, and that's another thing too. Like you're just dealing with one Catan, whereas opposed to, like if you look at the Catan by itself, it's not as strong as Galactus, because Galactus consumes worlds.
But the Catan we see nowadays, they're sharded, they're split.
Yeah, but no, but like even in their prime, it was just one Catan consuming. It was like because there were so many that they consumed so much. But if there's multiple Galactuses, I still think Galacti. I still think Galactus would take on the Catan.
I could
Because the
see
Necrons did it.
Right, especially if he has his heralds with him.
Yeah, like Silver Surfer's all up in there.
Mm-hmm. Wait, Pinguin.
But does that mean that
the Catan would have
the Necrons? Because then it'll be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the Silver Surfer can take on the Silent King. Well, the armies of the Silent King. Or can he? I don't know. You guys comment down below. Let us know. Next question. Next question comes from That Lucky Dragon. He asks, in an odd twist, Space Marines who defect. Basically, he's asking is. I don't know why I can't read it the second time. He's asking, can there be a penal army of Space Marines?
Who defected?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what warbands are.
Essentially, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's not in a Space Marine's nature to defect. So that'd be kind of... Well, I mean, because joining Chaos is essentially a way of defection.
You could have renegades though. We created a video on a recent renegade. I think it was last week. I forget his name.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
But yes, you can have renegades that aren't going to Chaos, but are still like away from the Imperium. So I guess you could call it a penal. Space Marines.
Penal.
Yeah, like a crime syndicate of Space Marines, I guess. But no, there's nothing like the penal legions of the Imperial Guard. Because you can't really force a Space Marine to do something. Other Space Marines would just much rather kill the Space Marine. That's what the Fallen are, right?
Yeah. I mean, look at the Bad Ebb War. That's all a bunch of renegades who eventually became Chaos.
Yeah. And then the closest thing that you can get to what you're kind of thinking of is maybe the Death Watch. Because the Death Watch is made up of all of these champions. They don't necessarily have to be champions. You could twist it in a way where like the chapter was actually trying to get rid of him because of his ideology, and it wasn't meshing well with the new chapter master. So they sent him to the Death Watch, and now the Death Watch creates a kill team of outcasts. Maybe they did create crime or commit crimes, but they weren't crimes the way that you think. They're crimes against the chapter's doctrines.
Yeah.
Worshipping the emperor, things like that.
It'd be really cool. They should do a story like that with like a little force of outcasts where you have like Andre 3000 in there. It'd be really cool.
Yeah, bring the band back together.
This one's by Shadow Vulcan. Would you rather have a Nurgle-fied Cardi B or a Cardi B-ified Nurgle? Let me just say that the only B I like is that of Bridget.
Bridget B. I think I would like a Cardi B no. So I want a Nurgle that appears like Cardi B, but I don't want Cardi B to fall to Chaos. Just because that just seems very like stereotypical. Like that sounds like a bad TV show or something, or a bad movie. Whereas like if you had a Nurgle or a Greater Demon inspired by Cardi B, that's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. It's like you can tell you're getting sick by like making the noises.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What's funny is that Games Workshop, like the old Games Workshop, a lot of their art comes from celebrities. So one of the famous ones is, I think it's a Black Templar that's like firing, but he's actually Sylvester Stallone. And then there's another one, I think it's a Black Templar again, and he's like shooting his bolt pistol, but it's actually, what's his name? Al Pacino. I should post pictures up. I'm probably not going to have time, but yeah.
You can find it.
Yeah. Next question.
This one is by Simon Chirps. What are the rest of the Mechanicus planning to do now that Belisarius Cawl has the ear of Lord Commander Gilliman? Will Call's example teach them to change and make technological advances, or are they just going to kill him and slide backwards into ignorance? So yeah, I mean, Cawl and Gilliman have a little like relationship thing going on there, but I still don't think that's going to change anything from the Mechanicus to like do anything different. I don't think they're going to kill Cawl, but at the same time, just because he's working alongside Gilliman doesn't mean that Call's betraying the Mechanicus.
Yeah, not to mention that the Mechanicus isn't like falling too far behind. There's a lot of Forge Worlds, and you might argue that Mars itself is more like bureaucratic and backwards. But there's a lot of Forge Worlds, specifically in the Calixis sector, that are putting in work. The ones that work with the Death Watch, same thing, because they're actually working with Necron technology.
Mm-hmm. But it's just ancient human technology. Don't tell them it's Necron.
Yeah. So innovation is happening. Yeah.
Yeah. And just because like they're searching for STCs doesn't mean they're backward in their ideas and stuff like that. They're just trying to understand the knowledge that was lost during the Age of Strife and all that.
Mm-hmm. Next question. This one is by Pikachu Nut. Seeing as GW is not the greatest supporter, could the Emperor's Sword have to do with the Eldar swords? Sorry, brain fart on how to spell it. Seeing as Games Workshop is not the greatest supporter. So could the Emperor's Sword be one of the Eldar swords? I don't think so.
No, because they've already told us that the Eldar are in possession of 4. And from what you guys were saying in the comments below, apparently the 5th Crone Sword is in Slaaneish's possession.
It's Khaldor Drago's sword, probably, right?
Yeah, who knows? But yeah, it's not the Emperor's Sword, because Gilliman is using that. And if the Eldar saw that Gilliman had the Emperor's Sword, they would have been like, hey, that's one of ours. Like,
stop it.
Give it back.
Yeah.
We gave you life. You can at least give us our sword back.
Next question.
This one is by Defool06. So Primaris Space Marines have new gene seeds in them, making them bigger and better. But what about their equipment? Is their power armor made with the same material as old power armor, their weapons, etc.?
Yeah, all that got an upgrade too. That's why you have their different names.
Phobos armor. They got like different pattern bolters. It's overall an overhaul for everything Space Marine.
Yeah,
just
the
like
old Marines are dead.
Their tanks, their dreadnoughts, it's all different.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you can't have Primaris Marines riding rhinos.
Which still makes sense.
It would make sense, yeah, but it's like, no.
No, I don't think it does make sense. Like, it's a rhino. Like, it's a tank. Why can't a Primaris, just because it's slightly a bit taller?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't like that.
So
I think that's...
yeah, it doesn't make sense.
That's Games Workshop's way of saying, like, buy my minis.
Mm-hmm.
Buy my new minis.
It's like, oh, you already have a Space Marine army? Well, you can't use it now if you want to use these guys.
Well, the worst part is that they basically come up to you and they put it in a way where it's like, you can still use the old ones, but you're not gonna get updates. You're not gonna be as strong on the tabletop.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, I guess, the agreement you make when you decide to play 40K.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you want to use Shrike? Well, guess what? He's a Primaris now. Now it won't make sense to have the old Shrike. You got to get the new one.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, it'd be like that.
Next question.
This one's by Michael Bizone 444. Who would win between Nurglings, Gretchen, and Rippers? Gretchen, I mean, that's my neighbor from like 5 years ago. I don't think she could take on any 40K monster, especially since she was on a wheelchair.
Oh.
Yeah. I think the Rippers would just get to her.
Yeah, I think it would come down to the Rippers or the Nurglings. I'll give it to the What are they called?
The rippers, yeah. Those
Yeah,
are little tyrannid spermies.
I would give it to them because they're animalistic and they're trying to fight for their survival, whereas the Nurglings understand that if they get destroyed, they just pop back up in the immaterium.
So, I mean, if the rippers devour and, like, rip apart the Nurglings, won't that mean that the rippers would get infected and thus spread Nurgle or die?
Unless they're part of High Fleet Cronus. Cronus
True.
has some type of, like, buff against them.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Yeah.
And also, killing things doesn't necessarily mean you get it. Like, you can be around somebody that has coronavirus. Doesn't mean you're going to get it. Because your body might fight it off, or the contact might just not even be there.
Or you could just be immune.
Right. Well, can you? Have they figured out if people are immune?
I don't know.
But yeah, those were the questions for today. If you guys have more questions for us, comment down below. I hope we answered all your questions. And yeah.
See you in the next one. This is the Sound Alchemist.
Gersh1.
And we are out of here.
Oh, what a beautiful